Fesker ma hula dunne, faltrik in the video, agus la brecken until sonna gai vula. Today is World Tartan Day. I never knew it was a thing either. But how much of the real history of tartan do you actually know? Let's find out. I wish this cartoon had even a modicum of truth to it, but alas, it does not. Tartan is ingrained in the social fabric, no pun intended, of Scotland, and the image of the tartan-clad Highlander endures to this day across the world. However, tartan is both a fabric and a pattern. The pattern is what most people think of when they think of tartan, where two or more different colours of wool are woven together to make a checked effect. The more colours that are used, the more complex the set or pattern is. This method of making checked designs is not unique to Scotland by any means. As a fabric, tartan can be made out of any number of materials, but in Scotland the traditional way is with wool. Originally, the wool was dyed with natural materials such as plants and ores, but were replaced with synthetic dyes in the mid-1800s. One of the most expensive dyes was red, made from cochineal, which was imported from South America, and as such could only be afforded by the elites as a status symbol. Despite being associated with the Highlands of Scotland first and foremost, tartan was actually common in the lowlands from as early as the 16th century. For example, James V of Scotland wore tartan hose or stockings and coats, kind of like in this image. Clan tartans, however, aren't nearly as old, as they were introduced in the late 18th century. Patterns and colours were originally a symbol of region or locality. Martin of Skye, yes, that is his real name, wrote in the 1690s that people were able, at first view of a man's plaid, to guess the place of his residence. We know that clan tartans didn't exist at this time because contemporary portraits show outfits with multiple tartans, as well as tartans that are completely unrecognisable today. By the early 18th century, tartan had become a political symbol, especially in the case of the Jacobites, led by Prince Charles Edward Stuart, also known as Bonnie Prince Charlie, in the Jacobite Rising of 1745. After the Jacobites were defeated at the Battle of Culloden in 1746, Highland dress was banned until 1782. Tartan itself was not banned, contrary to popular belief, but most Highland dress was made out of tartan, so it was a de facto ban on tartan. There were, however, many loopholes in this prescription act. For example, Highland dress could still be worn as part of a military uniform by Highland regiments that were raised in the Highlands to fight for the British Empire. Each regiment would have its own unique tartan. Most of these tartans were known as government tartans, and consisted mostly of black, dark green and blue. And the most well known of these is from the Black Watch, which is the 42nd Highland Regiment. This strict uniformity could be considered to have influenced the modern standardization of clan tartans. The Prescription Act, which had in effect banned tartan, was repealed in 1782, not even 40 years after being implemented. By the turn of the century, a number of Highland societies and clubs, with the intention of preserving Highland culture, were set up and led to the standardisation of tartans. The wearing of Highland dress to society meetings was encouraged, and as many attendees were clan elites, they began wearing distinct tartans from each other. The Highland Society of London wrote in 1815 to clan chiefs, asking them for samples of clan tartans, so that an official register could be compiled. Many chiefs didn't even know what their clan tartan was, if they even had one, so tartan manufacturers were often asked to design ones from scratch. Nowadays, there are tartans for clans, districts, commemorating events and people, religions, sports clubs, all manner of things. And anyone can wear any tartan for any reason. We're not actually as precious about our clan tartans as everyone seems to believe. Having said that, you might not want to go to some places in Glasgow wearing, for example, the Rangers Football Club tartan. Not unless you have a death wish. Although tartan was featured on every part of Highland dress, it is, of course, the kilt that tends to be the most recognisable. Originally, the kilt, or Féiliag Mór, literally the big wrap, consisted of 2 lengths of cloth sewn together, approximately 70 centimetres by 5 metres. It would be wrapped around the waist, as a modern kilt, and the rest would be draped over the torso in any manner of different ways. It would have been worn with a shirt, a coat, hose, stockings, or trews, or trousers. It was a practical garment that could be used as a sleeping bag, as a hood, or just as a kilt around the waist. In the early 18th century, Edmund Burt wrote of the Great Plaid. When the Highlanders are constrained to lie among the hills in cold, dry, windy weather, they sometimes soak the plaid in some river, and then, holding up a corner of it a little above their heads, they turn themselves round and round till they are enveloped by the whole mantle. Then they lay themselves down on the heath, where the wet and warmth of their bodies make a steam like that of a boiling kettle. The wet, they say, keeps them warm by thickening the stuff and keeping the wind from penetrating. Rather them than me, to be honest. It was around this time in the early 1700s that the Féiliag Mór was being replaced by the Féiliag Bec, or little wrap, which is far closer to the modern kilt. Instead of one great piece of cloth, a kilt was fashioned to go around the waist, as the modern kilt is now, and a separate piece to go over the shoulder. A story that I often hear is that an English mill owner in Argyll invented the modern kilt after his workers kept getting caught in the machinery. While this story sounds appealing, especially if you're English, there is little to no evidence for it. And it doesn't account for the fact that the small kilt was also appearing in the Northern Highlands around the same time, some 200 miles away. Women didn't wear kilts because they didn't spend days at a time roving the countryside, nor were they present in military regiments, but they did wear tartan shawls called erisigin. Shinagaday! There you have it. The truth about tartan and kilts in Scotland. I mentioned earlier that anyone can wear any tartan for any reason, but occasionally you do have to be careful. I'll leave you with a story of something that happened to me only a few years ago. I was going to a wedding and was advised by the groom to wear a neutral tartan, i.e. not a clan or family tartan. I took no heed and wore my own tartan. I hadn't been there for more than 10 minutes when an old lady made a beeline for me and demanded, "Is that a MacLean tartan, son?" with venomous aplomb. I told her no, and informed her of what tartan it was, and therefore what clan. She peered at me with suspicion and said, "All right," and skulked away, giving me the sideways eye as she did so. What would have happened if it was a MacLean tartan is anyone's guess, but I don't think it would have ended well for me. Yeah, we Scots, we do know how to hold a grudge.
You Scots sure are a contentious people.
You just made an enemy for life!